The invitation had been a surprise, a thick, cream-colored cardstock embossed with elegant script. "The Miller family dinner," it read, "to celebrate our successes." My name, Liam, was written in my mother's precise hand in the corner. A flicker of hope, naive and fragile, sparked in my chest. After years of being the afterthought, the creative Reed, unsuccessful son compared to my lawyer sister and surgeon brother. Was this an olive branch? I arrived at Saporito, the kind of restaurant where the menus have no prices and the waiters wear suits finer than my best interview attire. The table was a long, polished expanse of dark oak, already buzzing with the familiar symphony of my family's achievements. My father held court, his voice a low rumble of stock portfolios and golf handicaps. My mother, a symphony in pearls, nodded along, her smiles landing on everyone but me. My sister, Chloe, was detailing a brutal cross-examination, her hands slicing the air like scalpels. Her husband, Mark, interjected with his own corporate conquests. My brother, Ethan, and his wife, Sophia, were comparing the merits of private schools for their unborn child. I sat at the far end, near the breadbasket, the geographical symbol of my status. My news that my graphic novel had finally been picked up by a small but respected publisher withered on my tongue. Every time I tried to speak, the conversation would effortlessly flow around me, like water avoiding a rock. "Liam, dear," my mother said finally, patting my hand. "It's so good you can make it. That little Uber driving must keep you so busy." She said Uber the way one might say leprosy. "I actually quit that, Mom. My book." "Chloe," my father boomed, cutting me off without even looking my way. "Tell them about the partnership vote. Is it in the bag?" The meal continued this way. They ordered bottles of Opus 1, truffle-infused pasta, Wagyu beef, steaks the size of bricks. They encouraged me to try the lobster, Liam, live a little, with the condescending air of aristocrats tossing a coin to a beggar. I ordered the chicken, the cheapest entree, a knot of resentment tightening in my stomach. The grand finale was the dessert order. A multi-tiered chocolate monstrosity, gold-leafed and doused in cognac, was brought out. "For the family," my father declared, toasting with a glass of 30-year-old scotch. That's when I saw it. The final, definitive proof. As the dessert was placed center table, my mother leaned over and subtly, deliberately, moved my water glass to make room. It was a tiny gesture, but it screamed everything. This table is for family. This celebration is for family. You were just occupying a chair. The hope I'd felt earlier curdled into something cold and hard. I excused myself and went to the restroom, splashing water on my face. I looked at my reflection at the guy in the slightly too tight jacket, and something in me snapped. The rock they'd been flowing around was about to become a dam. On my way back, I spotted our waiter, Marco, a young man with tired eyes who had borne the brunt of my family's demanding whims all evening. He was looking at our table with the serene hatred only a server can muster. I caught his eye and gestured him toward the quiet alcove. "Rough table?" I asked sympathetically. He gave a weary smile. "This is unacceptable crowd. My favorite." "Let me make it up to you," I said, my voice low and conspiratorial. "They're my family. I know how they are. I need you to do me a huge favor." I laid out the plan. His eyes widened, then crinkled with a delicious, vengeful glee. "Are you sure?" he asked, a grin spreading. Never been more sure of anything in my life. I slipped him two $50 bills from my wallet. "For your trouble, and for the performance of a lifetime." I returned to the table just as the espresso martinis arrived. The mood was jovial, self-congratulatory. My father was slapping Ethan on the back. They were sated, smug, and utterly oblivious. It was time. I stood up, clearing my throat. "I just want to say," I began, my voice slightly louder than necessary. All eyes turned to me, faintly annoyed at the interruption. "Thank you for including me tonight. It really means a lot to be here, celebrating with family." I let the word hang in the air. My mother gave a thin, approving smile. "And to show my appreciation," I continued, "I insist on taking care of the bill tonight. For the whole family." The table erupted in feigned protestations. Liam, no, you can't. Chloe said, a laugh in her voice. That's sweet, but really, son, that's not necessary, my father said, though his eyes were already calculating the money he'd save. I insist, I said, my voice firm, projecting a confidence I didn't feel. It's the least I can do. My treat. For everything. After a few more theatrical refusals, they acquiesced, basking in the glow of my perceived newfound generosity and their own magnanimity in allowing me to pay. The mood lifted. Suddenly, I was interesting. I was worthy. Wow, Liam, that's really something. Sophia said. Must be a hell of a Uber week, Mark chuckled, elbowing me. I just smiled. Something like that. Right on cue, Marco approached, the leather bill holder in his hand. He made a show of presenting it to my father, who waved him grandly in my direction. No, the gentleman is paying tonight, my father announced, as if bestowing a knighthood. Marco, with the grace of a concert pianist, placed the holder in front of me. I made a show of opening it, my face a mask of serene acceptance. I didn't even flinch at the number, $2,200.47. I scrawled a generous tip on the receipt, bringing it to an even $2,500, and handed my credit card to Marco. Thank you, sir, he said, his face a perfect blank slate. He disappeared. The goodbyes were warm, almost genuine. There were hugs. Actual facts. My father clapped me on the shoulder. Proud of you, son. Stepping up. The words, which I'd craved for a decade, tasted like ash. They spilled out onto the sidewalk, laughing, making plans for next time. We'll have to let Liam pay more often. Ethan joked. I hung back. You guys go on ahead. I just need to use the restroom again. They waved, got into their luxury cars, and drove off into the night, their taillights glowing like amused red eyes. I watched them go, then turned and walked back into the restaurant. Marco was waiting at the host stand, holding my credit card. He handed it back to me with a smile. Then, he produced a second, identical bill holder. As requested, sir, he said. I opened it. Inside was the real bill, itemized with meticulous detail. And next to it, a signed receipt. But the signature wasn't mine. It was a flawless forgery of my father's arrogant, looping scrawl. The manager was more than happy to reprint it and void the first transaction after I explained the sensitive family situation, Marco said. He's had tables like that before. I looked at the fake bill I'd paid with my own card. It was a perfect replica, but for one thing. Marco had, as instructed, added a few choice items. A $400 bottle of Dom Perignon that we just had to try, an extra Wagyu steak for the table, and a $150 artisanal cheese plate that never existed. He'd even added a 25% large party gratuity that the restaurant didn't even require, making my performance of tipping even more hilariously tragic. My card had never been charged. The whole transaction was voided the second I walked away from the table. My family, in their blissful, self-involved ignorance, had driven away believing I, the failure, had just blown $2,500 on them. They'd be talking about it for weeks. A charming little story about the time Liam tried to buy their approval. But the real bill, the authentic one for $2,200.47, was now already processed. And it was heading directly to my father's American Express Platinum card, the one he'd so proudly handed to the maitre d' upon arrival to ensure everything was taken care of. He wouldn't notice until the statement arrived next month. A mysterious, expensive dinner at a restaurant he'd already forgotten, buried among charges for golf clubs and business lunches. I left Marco a real tip, $100 in cash. For an Oscar-worthy performance, I said. He pocketed it with a grin. My pleasure. I haven't had that much fun since I started here. I walked out into the cool night air, the knot in my stomach gone for the first time in years. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Thank you for dinner, sweetheart. It was a lovely gesture. We're so glad you're finally being sensible. Maybe this graphic novel nonsense is behind you now? I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. I typed back my reply, the truth a weapon they would never see coming. You're welcome, Mom. And don't worry about the graphic novel. The advance was just enough to treat my family to a nice dinner. Love you. I put my phone on airplane mode, hailed a cab, and went home. The peace was absolute. The revenge was perfect. They'd never know what hit them, and they'd never, ever make the mistake of thinking the table was only for family again. Now when the family screw-up had just handed them a $2,200 bill they didn't even know they'd paid.